In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make your footage go looking like this to this using any camera. It doesn't have to be any specific camera. You could do this with any camera. That's what this video is all about. This is not warp stabilization. This is not using a gimbal or anything like that. What I'm using is an application, a software, free software called Gyroflow. You can get it at gyroflow.xyz. That's literally XYZ is the setup here. Version 1.3. You go ahead and download it. It works on Windows, it works on Apple, and it works on Linux. Go ahead and download the software. Now that's step number one. Step number two is hardware. So in this example, what I've done is I've actually shot footage using the Canon EOS M with Magic Lantern, and on top of it, I have mounted an Insta360 1-inch edition. Now you could use an Insta360, you can use a GoPro, you can even use your cell phone. I've tried all three. With regards to my cell phone, I have a Pixel 6 Pro. There's an app called Sensor Logger and a few other options. The other alternative is the GoPro. I have a GoPro Hero 6, and there's also the Insta360. I got the best results from the Insta360. The only thing that you gotta be cognizant of is knowing what is the frame rate that you're recording at. So if you're recording at 24 frames per second on here, make sure you're recording 24 frames per second here. That will make a difference with regards to how you synchronize the gyroscopic data of in this case, the Insta360 is with the footage that you've captured on your camera. Again, now you can do this using any camera. So if you want to stabilize your footage without a gimbal, just go ahead and attach something that does record gyroscopic data like an Insta360 or a GoPro or your phone. My preference is this because I've gotten the best results out of this. When you're using this, make sure you press record on your gyro.data logger first. Then you press record on your camera. When you're done recording the clip, then you press record, or you press the record button to stop recording, then you stop recording on the sensor logger. You always want the sensor logger, the gyro data logger, to have more in the beginning and the end to overlap, as opposed to having more footage than actual sensor stabilization data. Always keep mind of that. You don't have to press at the same time. Press record on the sensor logger first, wait a second or two, then press record on the camera. Same thing, cut record on the camera, then cut recording on your gyro data logger. Once you've captured your footage, go ahead, and in this case, we're using Magic Lantern, so you're gonna use MLV app. Make sure you import all your footage. As a reminder, if you've never used MLV app, you click on the film strip here, you import your footage, you select your MLV files, highlight them all, click on open. I've already imported my footage here. Don't do any color grading in this. I prefer, my personal preference is to export into Cinema DNG, bring that into Adobe Premiere, and then make whatever grade that I want to do there. So I go ahead and select, highlight them all. As such, make sure you have Cinema DNG uncompressed selected. And then export the audio, click close, and then click on the white export button here. Select the folder. I created a folder called AV CDNG for Cinema DNG, AV being audio video. Select that folder, click select folder, and it will begin exporting. Now, one of the perks of exporting to Cinema DNG raw from MLV app without any grading is that it's going to be the fastest process and the most reliable without it crashing. In my experience, MLV app is not a very reliable program. And so for that reason, I just go ahead and select Cinema DNG. So once everything's exported, you close that out, go ahead and quit without saving. And then you go into Premiere, you fire up Premiere, create a project, right click, new item, sequence. I go ahead and create a random sequence, click on import, go ahead and select your MLV. In this case, I'm already in the Cinema DNG file, your first clip, select the first image, and then you can just go ahead and drag that file into your sequence, change your sequence settings, and boom, you are ready. Now, this is not a color grading tutorial, but what I'm gonna do as a process is I'm gonna go ahead and create an adjustment layer, right? You'll notice it already set the video settings in terms of height and width as well as frame rate. Click OK, and I'll create two adjustment layers. The first adjustment layer is going to be for noise reduction. The second adjustment layer is going to be for your color grade. Now, I haven't applied any of the effects, but what I do is I simply go ahead and I make my color grade by selecting my color panel. When I select color, you're going to be brought to Lumetri. You can go ahead and make your adjustments. The scope of this video is not a color grading tutorial, so I'm not going to worry about that. Let's go back to my assembly here, and I've already kind of done a lot of the stuff. So if I come back here, and as you'll notice, I have two sequences already. I have my color grading, my noise reduction, which that layer is off right now, and then I have my color grade. Once I've done my noise reduction application and I've done my color grade, I will export each of these clips in, and then I go to the end of that clip here, go out, right? And then I go to Control M, and then my export sequence comes up. From here, you want to export to ProRes. So I've already created a ProRes called 4K EOS M Gyroflow Prep. But simply go to QuickTime, and then from there, just make sure your resolution, I basically go to ProRes 422 HQ, and then make sure everything else is lined up. You got your 4K, use maximum render quality, use previews, render at maximum depth, and then I go ahead and save that as a preset, and I called it 4K EOS ML Gyroflow Prep. And then from there, I click on export. Once the file is exported, right, the file's been noise reduced and it's had a basic color grade added to it. Now, what I will do is I will fire up Gyroflow, go to open file, and then from here, you want to select the rendered file. In this case, I have my sequence1.mov, and then I have my Insta360 with the gyro data. I go to Insta360 here, and the first clip is the one that this would pair with. And the third step is to select your profile. Now, you can create your lens profile, but in my experience, if you're using any one of standard focal lengths of everything from like 14 mil all the way up to maybe 200 mil, they have all of those profiles, and they're just paired with different cameras. So in this case, what I'm using here is a 24mm FD lens. It's at f2, but the key important thing here is two factors: the focal length and the frame rate in which the footage was recorded. So from here, I type in 24mm, 23, which is the FPS, and I know an FX3 is a full frame camera, so I'll just go ahead and select the Canon FD 24mm at 23 frames per second. But when you do this, there's a few changes you're gonna have to make on the right side over here. So you'll notice it did an analysis and it tried to do some pairing. I go ahead, right click, delete all the sync points, because there's going to be some fine tuning that needs to be done, particularly because the footage here on the Insta360 is recorded at 24 frames per second, not 23.98, and as a result, there is a drift. I'll show you how that works. Slight tweaks. This is a practice that you want to maintain regardless of whether or not there's a drift. First thing I want to do is rolling shutter correction. So this is telling it to read out from bottom to top. I unselect that, and I know the EOS M, its frame readout time is about 21 milliseconds. So it'll try to correct the whatever rolling shutter that might exist based on that. Now, next step here is to go to the synchronization, go to advanced. From here, I tell it to analyze every 10 seconds, right? And sync points 5, and then from there I tell it to auto sync. Now, the only reason I'm doing this is not so that I can get synchronization. It's so that I can, so you'll see the Insta360 data is already found here. What this is doing, it is visually analyzing the footage to see whether or not it pairs with the Insta360 footage. And so you'll see it's highlighting different parts here. Usually in my experience, when there's some sort of drift, the synchronization is kind of off. In an ideal world where the frame rates match, the lens profile match, everything matches, you would just need to select a start and end point, two points. But in this case, because there's slight mismatch, you're gonna have to do some manual fine tuning, which is not that hard. it already tried to do some stuff, but you'll notice something, right? So if I go here, and you'll notice that it doesn't match up, right? And how do I know? Like, look, you look at this pattern, the pattern that it found in the footage, and the pattern here that's on the Insta360, it's not matching here. So I right click, delete all of the sync points, and I'm gonna manually synchronize this. Add a manual sync point right here. And I know by selecting this, I'm gonna have to go in this direction, right? Because I'm dragging the Insta360 footage over. In this case, let's see, if we go to minus 1900, nope, let's go to minus 2500. Almost there. Let's go to select this again and drag that over manually. Almost, boom. Let's go ahead and zoom in to get a finer look. Let's go over here. It's not perfect yet, so let's go ahead and fine tune that just enough, and boom, there you go. Look at that. So we've got a perfect match here. So if we play this back versus how this looks versus while stabilized, not stabilized, stabilized, not stabilized, stabilized. Excellent. Now let's go all the way to the end, right? This point right here. Right, this seems kind of stabilized, right? You'll see that it's being matched, but if we zoom in real tight, you'll notice there's a little bit of a drift. So right click, add a manual sync point, select the anchor, and then drag it over so to the point where it matches. And there you go. Click on play, boom, right? Unstabilized, stabilized. Now we'll worry about the field of view a little bit later, right? Let's go to another starting point over here. Family's home, so you probably hear them. So let's go here. So this is a point in the footage. So the footage is not stabilized right now. I add stabilization, but it's still kind of shaky here. Why? Well, if I zoom in, look, there is a drift. It's not matching up. So right click, add a manual sync point, hit the anchor, and drag that over just enough. Boom, there you go, right? And if I play back, there you go. See, now it's a lot more smooth. Unstabilized, stabilized. Look at that, right? So let's go ahead to the next sync point here. Now, a couple times you might find that the part that's been highlighted versus the part that you definitely want to see. So I would rather see this part here because it's more or less a pattern or a constant movement. So what I will do is, because I want this area highlighted, I will right click here and I will tell it to guess the IMU orientation. So I click on that, but don't let it finish. And the reason is, once it gets to a point that you found, click on cancel, boom. And the reason is because sometimes it tries to be smarter than it is. And so it might even think that this thing, that the Insta360 might think that it's actually upside down when it's not. And so that's why I don't let it finish the IMU orientation. But I just wanted to get highlight. Now, one of the things that you can do is, maybe these waveforms are too tight. You press and hold Alt on the key and you scroll up and it expands or makes the waveforms a little bit larger. So from here, also I can press Control, scroll up and down to move left or right. Now, if I zoom in a little bit tighter and I'm looking for an area where there might be where the sync might be a little bit off. So let's look over here, add a manual sync point. Might be a little bit of an adjustment, but there you go. Let's go ahead and move that over ever so slightly, right? Then I press play and I start stabilized. Boom, there you go. Look how smooth that is, right? Unstabilized, and then we're stabilized. Now, one of the things that you'll notice as this is playing back, you see this blurriness over here. The reason it's being blurry is because the shutter speed on the camera, because I was in a dark hallway, I had to turn that shutter speed down to allow in more light. But the downside of a slower shutter speed is that you get motion blur. But when you try to digitally stabilize, even with gyroscopic data, footage with motion blur, it's not going to eliminate the motion blur. So the sweet spot that I found is, you want to set the shutter speed at slowest, 1/160, ideally 1/200 to 1/250. If you're outdoors in the sun, you'll have plenty of light to deal with. However, if you're indoors, you might be running into a challenge, and it is advisable that you use a fast aperture bright lens. In this case, I was using a Canon FD 24mm f2 lens. I also have an f1.4, but knowing my lack of skill in manual focusing, I knew that I'd be missing focus throughout the entire 1.4 range. So I decided, let me just go ahead and keep the f2 lens, which is also a smaller, lighter lens to run around with. So, but yeah, anywhere between 1/200, 1/250 ideally is a sweet spot to minimize the motion blur so that when you're stabilizing the footage, it doesn't get all smudgy and muddy like it does over here. So if you run the shutter speed higher, you're not gonna run into any of these sort of weird smudgy artifacts. So this footage here is more or less stabilized. Now, I know this section right here, I had to work on this. It's stabilizing, but it's not stable. So we got to run through that same process again. Right click, guess IMU orientation, let it do its thing, but don't let it finish until you get to the part that you want. I got most of that, click on cancel. And so all I wanted to do was for it to highlight. All right, so right click, add manual sync point. Let me bring that over. Unstabilized, stabilized, unstabilized, stabilized. Pretty cool, huh? Now, let's see, press stop. Now you'll notice over here, I might need some additional, I might need another sync. See, it's drifted off a little bit here. So add manual sync point here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and drag that over just a teeny weeny bit. Boom, there you go. And play back, there you go, nice and smooth. Unstabilized, stabilized, boom. There you go. So I basically got that wherever I need it. Now you can just do a quick check, make sure the footage is stable throughout, exactly where you want it. Once this footage is where you want it to be, now you want to check your field of view. Obviously, you're gonna get those black spots like your camera's moving. If you zoom out even further, you can see in the manner in which you are actually moving the camera and its sensor. So what I do is I typically zoom in, let's say 0.8, which is 20%. We have a special guest that's going to be helping us with the tutorial. Yuzi, say hi. Hey, he's the star of the video. Well, anyway. Yeah, all these colors, right? So once you're done, once you've synchronized everything, you set your field of view to where you need it to be. Just make sure you go down to your export settings. What I like to do is I select ProRes and then export audio. Make sure that the file naming is appropriate. So in this case, wherever you're saving the file, make sure you do underscore. I like to do underscore stabilized. And then you click on export. And once the file is exported, click on, sure you want to exit? Yes, I want to exit. Now you go back into your project and you go ahead and bus. That light is on, the monitor light is on, the color light is on. We don't need any more lights. Hashtag dad life. Okay. Yeah, this is the challenge of putting together a video in the evening is, yeah, we got blue, we got red, we got another blue one. Leave me a comment below if you guys have to deal with your kids taking all your office supplies. Once you import the footage into your Premiere project, you go ahead and import it. That's it. And then you do your edit. One of the things that you can also benefit from is whenever you're dealing with the footage, I just go ahead. Now you've got a 4K video that you're dealing with. I have the footage that's stabilized, right? And then I also have footage that is ultra wide. Yeah. Yeah. So this is actually my 24mm Canon FD. And this here is actually the Insta360. But if we go ahead and change it to 73, there we go. That's the 14mm. So now it's as if I shot with, well, I shot with two cameras. I have the 14mm ultra wide, which is this, and I also have the 24mm that I shot with here. So if you wanted to do like a dual camera, 2-camera edit, you also have that option. So that's it, guys. This is how you stabilize the footage that's shot on your Canon EOS M. No, over here. I basically follow this process for each of the clips that I've shot. Hope you found this video and tutorial to be helpful and of value. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. I'll see you soon.
Oh no. Oh no.
Try again.
Oh no. Game over. Look at you. You didn't...
Cosa?
I see. Look. Look. Yeah.
Let's go, folks.
Oh. Go. What color?
No. Up, up, up.
Up. Okay. Ready? 1, 2. Red.
Red.
Okay.
Lalo.
Okay.
Lalo.
Yellow.
Lalo. We go we.
Green.
Papa.
Purple.
Papa. Better. Papa. Lalo.
Yellow.
Yeah.
Yellow.
Lalo.
Yellow. What color?
Red.
Orange.
Wow. Pretty.
I do.